And he's getting brave.
Okay. Well, we've got two kinds of fried chicken now. The question big, whose was whose and how they did it and why it was so different. And the mammy, our dad's mother, made a fried chicken that was uh, I mean, I can't say the word delicious, wonderful. There's just yeah, it's perfection. And what she would do, how she would make it, she would cut her chicken up and she soaked it in salty milk. And I don't know how long she would soak it. She would just, I mean, but you get the blood out and you get it, it gets some, but she didn't do buttermilk. She didn't have any kind of anything like that. And she would just soak it in that. Basically, it was a big wash, was what she was doing. And then all she did was she would coat it in a lot of flour, salt, and pepper. I mean, and most of the time she didn't even pepper it at all until she didn't put pepper in the flour. She just had flour in there, and then she'd salt and pepper it if she needed to because she'd already salted the milk. Um, but she would get a really heavy coat of flour on there. She didn't double dip it. She did it just one thing, and she would fry it in a big skillet, cast iron skillet. We had gas stoves, and she'd fry it in some deep oil. She didn't use lard. My family quit using lard pretty early on. Once in a while, if she didn't have cooking oil, she would throw some lard in there. But they would use Crisco or they would use cooking oil, and she would just fry it and turn it, and there was just the oil came up. You had like the top part of the chicken sticking out, and it would be this nice deep color after she finished frying it. She would take it out and drain it. Didn't do it too tight, and you would fry whole chicken. So that method was, and you still, you'd salt and pepper it, or whatever, just a touch, just enough. Nothing big, no fancy anything. Granny's, on the other hand, was almost a little bit more like a batter. She would she would soak it in salt water, if but she was usually a little bit more impatient and didn't get started as soon as Mammy did to get all the stuff ready. And but she liked to use an egg wash. She would dip it in egg. She would drain this off, dip it in flour, dip it in egg, put it back in flour, dredge it again, and then do it in the fry so that you would get a thicker crust on it and more of a batter. And now, Mammy's, when it was cold, was still crispy and stuff. Granny's, when it was cold, was almost like a cake. Not really a cake. It was more like coated in a pancake. But it was a bread. It was more of a bread, but it was still crispy. Some, early on, but and then you can't have fried chicken without gravy. And the gravy has to have those little bits of stuff, and both of them would make phenomenal gravy. You had to take some of the little parts out of Granny would take if some of the big chunks fell off, she would take that out of it. But now the gravy was the exact same. You have to take some of the fat out. You take the fat out because you don't want it just all grease. But then you put flour in, and it's basically equal parts flour and grease. And then you brown it. And you have to brown that flour, and they both did the same thing. And they both made milk gravies. And then you thin the end of it down. You would thin it down with some water. But, and we're talking no whisks, no Tupperware shaker, no, nothing. You brown that gravy. You're stirring it with a fork.
That's how we learned how to make gravy.
Yeah, and so you've got, and then fried chicken or chicken gravy and gravy. There's one thing about it. It's a liquid when it's hot, and it's a solid when it's not. And that's the right kind of gravy. Otherwise, it's
Something else.
something else.